Laowa's new 65mm and 80mm 1.5 stretch nanomorphs are finally here, but check this out. Laowa is also releasing a 1.3 times front mount anamorphic adapter that screws onto them. So now the 65 and the 80 can turn into a 2 times stretch anamorphic lens. So if you've never messed around with a front mount adapter before, they can fit on any lens, and you multiply the horizontal squeeze by 1.33. So normal aspherical lenses get 1.3 times more cinematic, but when you multiply 1.33 times and already 1.5 times, you get super cinematic. You guys ready? These lenses, by the way, are fantastic. This intro has nothing to do with the lenses. I'll explain later. I have not been this excited since I was 9 years old and Power Rangers busted out the Ultra Zord. First and foremost, these are Super 35 lenses that match the kit, but the adapter can work with any lens that's full frame. All three are right now on Indiegogo, an absolute bargain. So Laowa says the adapter is really only for the 50, the 65, and the 80mm nanomorphs. They claim the 35 and the 27 would have too much distortion. Well, you can see why. I'm actually shooting this right now on full frame on the 35mm with the adapter, and there is some significant distortion in vignette. And yes, there's this pin cushion distortion, which I've tastefully converted to barrel distortion. More about that in post later. So I've been following the production of the 65mm and the 80 since I played with them at NAB, but now I've had these for a few weeks and they are spectacular. The combination of the adapter with these lenses make them one of the most affordable 2 times stretch anamorphic kits that you can get. Normally 2 times anamorphic lenses start around $3,500 each, but Laowa here has split the cost in half. They made the 1.5 stretch very affordable, and then if you just want to add an extra $700, you can turn the entire kit into a 2 times stretch. So, you know, I was stoked when these things first came out because they are small enough that I can fly them on the Inspire 2 and 3, the heaviest being the 50mm at 400 grams. But that's kind of changed now with the 65mm weighing in at 670 grams and the 80mm smashing them at 704 grams. These are no longer, you know, like in the nano category. You know how many counterweights it's gonna take to strap this to the Inspire 3? End of this video, I will have this mounted on the Inspire 3. The 1.33 adapter is made by the same standards as the Nanomorphs with its all aluminum housing. By itself, it weighs 892 grams, which is heavier than the taking lenses. So heavy, in fact, that it has its own mount. When threaded onto an 80mm together, they weigh a combined 1,627 grams. That's 3.5 pounds. Honestly, for a 2 times stretch anamorphic lens, 3.5 pounds is not bad. Now, just like the rest of the Nanomorph collection, the 65 and 80mm come in most all mounts, including EF and PL Cine version. And they offer 3 different flare colors, which are denoted by the stripe on the banding. Amber is great for sunsets and daytime, blue is ideal for night shoots and vehicle headlights, and silver is kind of great all around as it reflects the light that it's given. What I like about the Nano collection in whole is that the flare coatings do not contaminate other colors, unlike other Chinese anamorphic lenses that I've tested in the past that kind of bathe the whole image in a blue coating and make color correcting it hard to do. These don't have that problem. Both the lenses and the adapter are pretty color neutral. The adapter also comes in the same flare option. Here I have the blue adapter, and even though it's blue, it does lean into neutral flare territory. I noticed this when pairing it with other taking lenses. What's really special is when you mix and match colors. Here, I have the blue adapter on the 50mm amber, and both colors manage to find their way out. Look, we get a little bit of the blue right there, and then comes the amber. This is really cool. It gets really interesting with scopes when you mix and match like vintage lenses too, because vintage lenses have their own characteristics and colors. I do kind of like mixing and matching. It makes it look not so clinical. These flares are still kind of in that ballpark of engineered flares. If you're a purist, you're gonna wanna soften them up a little bit with either softer lighting or diffusion or a front mount diopter. The flares on the adapter, on the other hand, are a bit softer and wider and more organic when mounted on a spherical taking lenses. I do have prototype versions from last year that I reviewed, and remember, those flares I didn't like because they felt a little too clinical. But since then, the actual production copies that have come out, they are a much softer, more organic flare. And I think that added with the 2 times stretch on top, it even softens the flare even more. Optically, the 65 and the 80 match the Nanomorph set. They both have aperture range of T2.4 to T16 and a very close focus at 70 centimeters. Now, wide open they are sharp, but they both suffer from that washed out diffraction look, but that disappears at T2.8 and peak sharpness is around T4. The 65 has 15 elements and 13 groups with a focus throw of 270 degrees, and the 80mm has 14 elements and 13 groups with a focus throw of 274 degrees. They both have a 62mm front thread versus the smaller 55mm front thread of the 27, 35, and 50mm counterparts. I tested the squeeze factor and confirmed it's consistently 1.5 stretch with all the lenses, including with the 2x stretch adapter across the entire set. So can you shoot full frame? These are technically Super 35 APS-C lenses, but the image circle of the 65 and 80 are 28.8 by 18mm, which is larger than the rest of the Nanomorphs and larger than Super 35. In my last video on the Nanomorphs, I found an extra 15 to 25% usable real estate when filming full frame and correcting the pin cushion distortion and then cropping this in post. And I found the same to be true with these lenses. If you can live with more pronounced fall off and vignette, then you can squeeze much more real estate out of these lenses. The 65mm has about 28% and 80mm has about 25%. And if you correct the pin cushion distortion on the edges, then those numbers drop to about 18%, 20% respectively. Now this gets interesting when filming full frame with these lenses and paired with the 1.33 adapter. At a 2x stretch, you don't get as much horizontally as you do vertically. So in short, if you want more character and more vertical information or a different aspect ratio, then shoot full frame. I would recommend using a lens distortion node in post and then crop the vignette. I left links to my free DaVinci Resolve power grades for these lenses in the description. They are drag and drop, and I'm left with this beautiful 2x stretch anamorphic with barrel distortion. Focus breathing is very well controlled given the price tag. However, this is only true for Super 35 mode. If you decide to shoot full frame and use more of that frame, you will see some magnification on the sides. One thing that did surprise me is very little to no chromatic aberrations on the 65 or 85 when wide open at T2.4. With the 1.33 adapter, softness in the corners is to be expected and overall center sharpness is a click down, but this is likely because you're at the whim of the taking lens and its ability to be set perfectly to infinity. But I gotta say, this setup is plenty sharp for a 2x stretch anamorphic kit. This is a single focus adapter and it can work with other lenses with the 77mm thread. When you thread it on the front, the rear taking lens is set to infinity, then you adjust the adapter's focus like you would a normal lens. With the adapter on, there's very little light loss. I would estimate it's less than 1/8 of a stop, and it still retains pretty good minimum focusing distance. Here, the minimum focus of the 80mm by itself is 70 centimeters, and with the adapter added, it's 89 centimeters. This is kind of insane. You normally don't get 2x stretch anamorphic glass that's this lightweight, this fast, with this close focus, at this price. Oh, and also, by the way, you could take the front element adapter off and put it on any other lens you want. So the adapter comes with a 55mm, 62mm, and 72mm step-up rings. So I added it to each of my other lenses in that size range, and it worked very well with most of the lenses and with most T-stops. I added it to my all-time favorite lens, the 50mm f/0.95 Dream lens from Canon, and it takes these vintage lenses to a whole other level. It takes what's already in the lens and then just kind of magnifies it. I also tried it on a few focal lengths to see kind of what the limits are. Too long of a focal length, like this 250mm Minolta rocker, it's just a hot mess. And even at 135, it's still a challenge to get center sharpness. But 85mm works good, but you must stop down to f2.8 for it to be decently sharp. And on the flip side, if you go too wide, then you get what you see here. This was mounted on 24mm. What's the most surprising is how well it handled fast apertures, such as this Voigtlander 40mm f1.2, or my Sony G-Master 50mm 1.2. And of course, my Speedmaster 50mm f/0.95 opened fully up. it could use a stop down. So this adapter by itself is very well priced at $700. This covers full frame, so there are really plenty of options for taking lenses. I could do a whole video just on this adapter. Needless to say, I'm impressed. While the rear thread is 77 millimeters, the front thread is 86 millimeters, which is kind of an odd one, but I ordered a 95 millimeter to 86 millimeter step down ring, and then I can use all my 95 millimeter accessories like this close focus diopter. Guys, the situation got worse. We got a big problem. Look at that size of the hornet's nest that we have. Whoa, easy, easy, take it easy. I can't not film it. I have to film it. So my wife is a huge animal lover, so I never kill insects. But in this case, super aggressive bald face hornet's nest next to the master bedroom, well, that's a hall pass. So I did what any concerned father would do. I got the shop vac. And now this is where my nerves got the best of me. I was running the shop vac the wrong direction. So instead of sucking them up, I've been blasting them with a stream of air right into the heart of the nest. Interesting strategy, Josh. Stun them and piss them off. Yeah, for about 10 minutes I was wondering why there's so many more hornets now than ever. Now I gotta say, I am very impressed for the 65 millimeter plus the 1.33 adapter and a 4 times close focus diopter. It's very sharp. Oh fuck. This story will have to be concluded in my next video. One thing I noticed is that even with the 4 times close focus diopter on the 80 millimeter and the adapter is just how sharp it still is. Normally this would be an absolute mess, but these optics work very well with each other. So my only criticism of the adapter is the button release. There's a hold on the lens so that you can thread it on and then align it properly. There are no markings that align the nanomorph, so getting it perfectly vertical by eye is kind of a challenge. And even if it's off a little bit, you will notice it in the edit and it will take some effort to skew it back. The second issue is that the button hold is not strong enough. So if you shoot this handheld, you can skew the adapter very easily out of alignment. You know, just from like focusing too fast will skew it. They have a 3/8 lens mount on the bottom to lock it into a cheese plate or lens support, and you have to use this even if shooting handheld. Now this is just a prototype version, so who knows, maybe Laowa has fixed this already, or maybe in production they can give it some teeth or grooves, or even just a single friction bolt to lock in the vertices would be amazing. These threads here, they don't go through. They're great for attaching to the lens, but they don't actually lock the rotating lens element in place. Here, I built a rail system from Condor Blue with an adjustable Arca Swiss mount, adjustable vertical lens support, and I was able to attach a focus motor and LiDAR autofocus, no problem. And as long as this was locked down to the cheese plate, I didn't have any issues with it changing angles. Now, one thing I really like about these lenses is the back focus adjust. Now, anamorphic lenses must be rear focused for peak sharpness. Some do it with shims, but the Nanomorph line has this small thread on the back that you can unscrew and then use it as a lever to adjust that back focus. I gotta hand it to Laowa. These are insanely small and affordable and fun. I was able to balance the 65 and 85 on the Ronin 4D, giving them autofocus. While I was filming this section, my very pregnant nurse wife disappeared while I was swapping batteries, and then I found her 10 minutes later and she had literally pulled this drowned guy out of the water and got him breathing again. She saved his life. And I cut camera. I didn't film any of it. I filmed none of it. Anyway, guys, go check out that Indiegogo. I left links down below. It's probably the best deal of anamorphic lenses on the web right now. Woo! That looks good. 80 millimeter on the Inspire 3 with a 2-time stretch anamorphic. This is Josh Yo saying thank you very much. Stay creative. Go make smart. Loser. My wife is a hero and I'm a loser.